want to read it and experience it, because that's part of the review, is to be like, oh my gosh, this is so great.
Welcome to the Pull Bag. Join us as we dig out our latest comics and discuss them with the rotating panel of the GCRN crew. So sit back and enjoy this week's Pull Bag.
You know wreckers don't call for backup. They call for cleanup.
Hello and welcome to the Pull Bag. I am your host, TFG1Mike, and this is another Origins episode. For those of you who don't know, who haven't been listening to this show, first of all, why haven't you? We've only had 15 episodes so far. The Origins episodes is where I bring someone on that I want to talk to and ask them about their comic credentials, as Ender so eloquently put it in episode 9. And this time around, I have LadyWreck of the Underbase. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself?
That is awesome. No, I'm doing very good. I've recorded 2 podcasts tonight, and I will have edited 2 podcasts.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a rough job podcasting.
It is what it is.
Air quotes there.
Yeah.
Yes. So, for those of you who don't know who LadyWreck is, she is one of the main hosts of the Underbase, which is solely a Transformers comics podcast.
It is.
You guys do comics, right?
Yeah. We just
Moonbase 2 does the other stuff.
Yeah, we only do the comic, anything comic oriented or whatnot. So literature, art, that type of thing. So yeah.
Where? Like, okay, I get Moonbase 2. Hey, Spike and Bumblebee. Oh, what are we going to do now? You know, I get that. Where did the title for the Underbase come from?
Well, at the time when I first started reviewing and podcasting, we were actually a part of the Moonbase 2. It was just a segment that we would review, record, yeah. And it would go out with the regular show. And after that, a couple of months of doing that, Dave, who was running the show, Kal-El Prime, he decided that he wanted to make it more permanent. It was kind of like, it was just the next thing that he was expanding to. And that's where he brought on other reviewers to help out with comics. And he kind of put it up to the listeners. And I think I don't even remember what the other ones are, because the forum that all of those suggestions were on has since been taken down. Yeah. But I think there were three particular, there were 3 options. And I think out of the 3, one of them was the Underbase. And so that's how it kind of came into being. And I think it was a Marvel reference is where it came from. I'm not exactly sure on that, because I know there was the Underbase saga in Marvel back in the day. I haven't read it. I should. But that's pretty much where it started. And at the time, it was just as, Last Stand of the Wreckers had just ended, and that was the first thing I'd ever reviewed. And Ongoing was just kicking off. And Dave wasn't really too keen on it. And so he kind of just said, guys,
just take it. Yeah.
Here's the podcast. Here's the Underbase. Go run with it. Have fun. We're like, oh, okay, sure. Of course, at the time, we're like, I've never run a podcast in my life. I've listened to them for maybe about a year. I don't know anything.
Yeah, that's the same way I was in 2008.
I was running off of a little laptop that when we Skyped, it had this noise, and sometimes I would use my iPod Touch, which had a better, sound to it because it didn't have the fan from the old laptop, and it just, we still sent, at that point, we sent all the files, we recorded it and sent it over to Dave, and we were still figuring out like best microphones, and I mean, it was just quite literally, it was just kind of dropped in our lap and said, okay, go for it. Learn as you go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it started out, is just that, getting on as a reviewer. It was random. Dave, like I said, he was trying to expand, and he wanted to kind of start doing comics type of review on Moonbase 2. It just kind of expand to maybe multiple different podcasts and whatnot. And he had already kind of dabbled a little bit with, he brought Ender on, I think the fall before the Wreckers came out. I think at that time it was, I heard a review of Coda. It was issue 15. That was the one with Prowl. And that was the first time I had ever heard Ender review anything. But, like, he gushed about this comic to the extent that after I finished the podcast, I said, I'm going to go and buy my first comic. And then, of course, he had nothing but good things to say about Last Night of the Wreckers. So because of that, I went out and got my first comic, and I intended to follow Last Night of the Wreckers for the first time. And I'd never set foot inside a comic shop before, and I had never gotten, where I was actually running down and trying to get single issues for a specific series before, at least not in a long time. I did back when I was a little kid, but we probably get into that later. But long story short is that it kind of, as amazing as this is, it was probably because of Ender and another podcast it was on with Anthony over on T-Formers, the T-Formers podcast. The last podcast that they did, I actually listened to it. It was like the last one. I was like, oh, dang it. I was looking for podcasts, and a couple things that Anthony had said because it was their farewell show, is like that, he was ending the podcast because he had other projects going on, and he had to take a step back. And he said that somebody else, just making room for somebody else to step forward and fulfill a need in the fandom, because there's always a place for everybody. And so a couple months after that, Dave puts out this call on the Moonbase 2 forum that they were looking for some comic reviewers. And I thought, well, I'm getting those. Maybe I could do a couple writing reviews. That would be cool. That would be fun. Because I have a little bit of an art background as well. And so I thought, well, writing and art, I could do that. So I contacted him, and so did my co-host, Matt. And so that's how we got picked out of the crowd, is the fact that he put the call out there and we answered it. I had no idea it meant that I was going to be on a podcast. I thought, oh, no, I was just going to write. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That cured me real quick. That's how it started.
Yeah. So you mentioned that when you were a kid, how did you come to know comics? Did someone introduce it to you, or did you just... How did that come about?
This is kind of a sad story, actually. I never really got into comics when I was a kid. It was something that I did more as an adult. I became an adult fan solely because of Transformers. But okay, you want to go really old school. Back in the day, I remember who Wonder Woman was. And my first introduction to, I'd say, any comic hero was probably that far back. And I was like maybe 4 or 5, something like that. And because I watched a little bit, they had the old show way back in the day. At least I remember watching it with my family a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. I don't remember like full episodes, but I remember the lady that played Wonder Woman, and she's just like that woman. And of course there was Superman 2, which was like the old movie, the old one. Yeah. And I was a kid. I got like some, superhero underwear and all that stuff, and Wonder Woman, Batgirl, that type of thing. But that was pretty much my exposure to comics, was just little kid stuff that, I could recognize who some of the characters were, and I knew who they were. I didn't know anything about them or what they did. I just knew they were heroes, and that was the extent of that. And for the most part, that was my exposure to comics up until I was maybe in high school. Fast forward that to about Transformers, because I was big into the TV show. In fact, I remember being like 8 years old, and I saw the first advertisements for it when they were going to actually put it on TV. And it didn't say a time or when they were going to actually broadcast the first episode. So for 2 weeks, I ran home from the bus stop every afternoon because I wanted to get home hoping that I would see the first show. And so I'm like, because all I saw were advertisements, but I don't remember seeing a date or a time or when it was going to air. I wasn't quite familiar at the time. I had to find out that information, like where to get it, because you have to like look in the newspaper or have some sort of TV guide or something like that, which I wasn't quite sure how to do that. I was only 8, and I didn't really have, help from my parents. They're like, you don't need to watch cartoons. You need to do your homework. So, I was like, hey, little kids' priorities, okay? It's priorities, right? And so I was running home for 2 weeks. I remember it was 2 weeks straight because every single time I'd turn on the TV, I'd be looking for this show. And I'd wait for like a good 2, maybe 2.5 hours. And then I'd be like disappointed, like really disappointed, going, I want to see this show and I don't want to miss it. And so, that's why I remember it, is because I felt so, upset that it wasn't on yet. So, and then once the show actually came on, I was just like, I think it was like I had 30 minutes until it came on, so I would get off the bus and I would run home and I'd try to do my homework within 30 minutes so I wouldn't miss anything. I was crazy. I was just a crazy kid. I did get the toys. My brothers both got one each. I got My Little Pony and they got Transformers. So, but I was all right with that because I was like, it's the show is cool. And of course, when you're a girl and you're being told, oh, those are toys for little boys. You're not a little boy, so you can have dollies and stuff. And I'm like going, okay, whatever. What? I just got over the fact that I wasn't going to get one, so whatever. But yeah, I was obsessed with the show. It came to the point where I would not, like, I really wanted to watch the show. If my brothers tried to turn it off or anything, there'd be this big battle, and it bothered my mother. It really bothered my mother that I was so obsessed about this show. And so she basically grounded me from watching it. And I was like, no, you can't do this to me. Crying in tears and all that. And I begged my parents at the time because the movie was about to come out. So I'd made it through at least 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And they were not going to let me go. And so I begged and 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 begged. So my mom made this deal with me. She says, okay, I will take you to the movie, but then you have to give it up. You're not going to watch it anymore after that. I don't want anything else ever again. I don't want to hear anything about it. I will take you to the movie, but that means that's it. And so
considering what happens in the movie, I'm sure you wanted to give it up.
So I went, I saw it, and yes, it was like, oh, Optimus Prime died. No, all of that stuff. And yes, I cried because I was a girl, and I still cry to this day if I allow myself to get there. But I gave it up. I never saw season 3 or the ending season 4.
Yeah.
I saw parts and pieces. Like, there were times where my parents weren't home, and I was like, flipping through the channels, and oh my goodness, it's Transformers. Like, I gotta watch it. And I'd get little glimpses, and I'd hear my parents come home. I turn it off right away, because I made a promise. I'm not gonna break my promise, and yeah, so I dropped it, and I saw parts and pieces, like I said, and that was it. Didn't get to see the ending until I was an adult. And then, of course, afterwards I heard that there were comics. Now, I did ask about them because I thought, well, it's not the TV show, it's a comic. And so I thought,
And
well,
it's reading, and it's semi
yeah, yeah.
educational.
And you'd think, because young kid, I lived in a small town, I'll ask. Why not? Why not ask? And that pretty much I was told, and it just, I think back on those years and I go, golly, I was so sheltered. It was not even funny. My parents pretty much steered me away from the comics for a couple of reasons. One, we lived in a small town and there really wasn't a comic shop there, to be honest. I don't ever, even as an adult now, I think back, I'm like, no, I never even remember hearing of a comic shop in that area. So it was, part of it was the fact that we didn't really have the resources. Two, my parents really didn't have the money. And I know that's kind of a cop out because back in the day, that was actually when they were really cheap. But three, they gave me this dumbass excuse how comics are not for kids. And I know it sounds bad because now I know better, but back in the day, for some reason that hit my little kid ears and I thought, oh, okay, well, I know other kids read them and, but it's like my parents just didn't want me to get into it and they didn't want me to read it. And so I pretty much I just kind of wrote off comics after that, which is kind of sad because considering what I actually ended up going to college for and the education that I got, I mean, I really could have benefited from having that early exposure to comics and illustration and how to tell a story with pictures. And so I kind of look back on that. I mean, now as an adult, I just think, golly, you got to be careful what you say to your kids because even the littlest things that you might think are just harmless as little kids, your parents tell you something, you believe it. And so I kind of steered away from comics because of a misunderstanding. And that kind of is kind of sad if you think about it. And there have been times where I've actually been really kind of angry that my parents did that.
I would say for me, what specifically to the old cartoon, I loved it when they switched it to the morning time. Like it used to, because I used to live in Massachusetts. I used to be I'm still in the Eastern time zone, but it was. They moved it to 6 a.m. Eastern, and I loved it because it was right before I had to run out and catch the school bus. Because every other time when it was on in the afternoon, my mom would be like, "Oh, you want to go over to your Aunt Debbie's or whatever?" And every time I would go over there and I would try to watch it, my aunt was like, "Yeah, that's too violent." Oh, hey, I swear that robot just said ass. I'm not going to have any children in my house watching a cartoon that someone says ass on.
Yeah. See, the afternoon was actually better for me because in the morning my parents did not allow TV at all. So I think at that point when they did make it in the morning, that's the time where I wasn't allowed to watch it anyhow. So by that time we'd gotten past that. I was like, oh, I can't watch it anyhow. So even if it moves to the morning, I'm not missing anything. But because of that, I turned to books. So I couldn't read comics and I couldn't, watch the show. So I turned to books. By the 4th grade, I was reading books and hanging out in the library and saving money to buy books of my own. And I just took off. My next obsession was that. So I turned to books. I turned to writing, not necessarily writing, but I liked stories. I was just a story nut. And that kind of, it filled a hole that I didn't have. And I remember even thinking as a kid, I want to see the rest of that, but I realized that kind of out of my control. And if it's still around, it will be when I'm an adult. I'll find some way to find it someday and connect back with that. And that was it. That was it. I had to give it up. It wasn't my choice. I didn't want to give it up. In fact, I remember I still have a couple journals that I wrote back then, just writing about how I want to get back to it someday. Even years later after that, it's funny how and the reason why I got back into it is because I had kids of my own, and it's just kind of one of those full circle things. You end up having your own kids, and you start going, oh, what was I into when I was a kid? I'd like to get back to that.
Yeah.
So that's where it ended up doing. But it was because of those years, those impressionable years, that I got into storytelling, and that I got into art, and I ended up going all the way up through, like, when I went to college, I took creative writing classes, and I went to a university studying as an illustration major. So I can't draw robots because they're just way. I just, my brain wrapping around it, I don't have any reference material. I could probably fiddle around with it.
I'm sure one of the Joshes could teach you.
I'm sure that they probably could, but a lot of it's on computer nowadays, and I was an oil painting person. I loved oil painting, and I need to learn the computers. What I need to do, I need to sit down and lock myself in a room with a computer and a Photoshop and a nice Wacom or whatever pad they have nowadays. I'm sure they could give me some good tips on what to get, and then just learn it, just practice my butt off, but I don't have time now.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on and talk about all this stuff, because everywhere I see people talking about you or to you, it's like, Aimee, she does all this stuff with comics now, and she's a mother. Where does she find the time?
Yeah. Well, let's just say this. My kids they are both in school now. My youngest was in preschool, but now he's in kindergarten this year. And while they're at school, I do stuff. And when they are home, I get them started on other stuff, and I kind of multitask. And my house is not like immaculate like my mother's house is. It's definitely has its mess. It's mostly livable in it, but there are a couple rooms that need to be cleaned out badly, and I'm worried that I might be starting to hoard a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I do fun things. I have both boys, so it's like I don't have to. I can hang out with the boys, and I get the boy things. I had 2 brothers too, so I didn't have any sisters. I'm just kind of not a girly girl, although I can be a girly girl. And I just, I hang out and do fun things with them, and like we play games and get on the Xbox with the kids and play Transformers. I sit down and watch cartoons with them. I multitask. It's something that's okay for kids, and just because I had a family that I had a parent situation where they kind of censored a lot of stuff and kept me from getting into stuff, but I still found a way to read books. I think sometimes books are worse than comics.
Yeah.
There are some
Depends on the book.
Yeah, there are some out there that there are some out there that I found, let's just say that. Mom's like, hey, I hope that's a really nice book for you that doesn't have anything dirty in it. Like, no, Mom, it doesn't. And even if it did, I'd say, no, Mom, it's fine.
Even though it says Harlequin on the cover, no, there's nothing dirty in that.
Oh, I wasn't a romance person. I went to the sci-fi and the fantasy, which, there's some stuff out there.
All right. So you said that Wreckers was the first thing you got into when you started. Mm-hmm. So for those that don't know, Transformers: Last Stand of the Wreckers it wasn't ongoing, but it was more of a mini-series.
It was a mini-series. It was 5 issues. That it's about 2 years. Maybe it's 3 now. Yeah, it's about 3 years now. Yeah. Came out it was released about the same time that the Transformers ongoing issue 1 started up. Not too long after that. So, and it was also going on during the Bumblebee mini as well. Yeah.
So I assume after reading that's where you got the whole Wreck and Rule thing.
Oh yes, absolutely. That's why I'm actually called Lady Wreck. While I was reviewing it, again, Dave used to call me our Lady of Mayhem, or Wrecking Lady, and it just kind of had a ring to it. I had to,
right.
kind of change my name because of that. It was something else, and I was like, you know what? I couldn't think of really cool Transformer homage, and then Lady Wreck showed up, and I went, yeah, it's me right there. Woohoo!
Yeah, that works.
Totally works.
So you're pretty much reading everything Transformers-wise these days?
Right now I am, yes. I'm pretty much reading every... and that's the odd thing, because I did at... let's see. When I was in high school, I got into like a Star Trek obsession and started reading everything Star Trek. And I did actually pick up a string of comics at the time, but they just didn't keep my interest very well. And I thought the books just seemed to do it a little bit better. So I only had I got a couple weeks worth of issues, and then I just kind of died off on it. Ended up walking away from that. And that was pretty much it when it came to, and I didn't go into a comic shop to get that. It came with a Star Trek magazine. And I've got it it's in a box somewhere in my closet or something. Anyhow, and so that's pretty much it when it came to comics. So when I say I walked into a comic shop for the first time, I had bought comics, but I hadn't really, I bought them, I read them, I just didn't get into them. But when I went in for the first time to get, I actually went in and got the Coda issue that Ender had reviewed on the Underbase, or not the Underbase at the time, it was Moonbase 2 at the time. And so I went and got it, had the typical response that the guy that walks, the girl that walks in the comic shop, oh, you're here for your boyfriend, right? You're here to get something for somebody else. You don't look like a comic fan. And I was like, no, actually it's here for me. And he kind of looked at me like, huh?
Yeah.
What do you want again? I want Transformers. Like, it's in the back. And they kind of just look at you like you're an odd, where did you come from?
Why am I flashing to the Big Bang Theory episode when Penny walks into the comic shop for the first time and every single guy in the room nearly passes out and has an asthma attack?
Oh, gosh. I was the only one there. I mean, I think there was one other guy. He was talking to the guy that was at the front desk, and then he turned around and left. He didn't even look at me. But it was the guy that was running the shop that was just like, just don't look like the comic fan. Yeah. And I was like, this is my first time. I'm like, this is so exciting. And he's like, you just don't look like the right person to be here. And I was like, I want to buy a comic. And he's like, oh yeah, in about 2 weeks, you're probably going to be like, never back here again. It turns out that guy actually, I stayed devoted, coming in there until he closed the shop. And then afterwards, he was the guy that I called up and said, hey, I'd email him and say, I want this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue. I did that for a good solid year. So, you never know. Those girls that kind of walk in there and say, no, I'm not, this is not a fad. I'm here for life. Yeah. They mean it.
This is not 3D.
Yeah.
So, are you just reading the Transformers stuff? You're not reading anything Marvel or DC or?
I'm not really. I really don't. I don't have the time right now. Yeah, I'm a very busy woman, and then on top of that, I'm also a podcaster. And then on top of that, I'm just it's crazy. Yeah. But I am getting all of the Transformers comics right now, and I have dabbled with a few other things. Like everybody had good things to say about the Birds of Prey that was written by Gail Simone, and so I have that, but I haven't finished it. I kind of started it, but I didn't finish it. I've picked up The Walking Dead. I haven't finished that either, but I've gotten up to like issue 35, 36. Then the show came on and I started watching that. I need to go back and watch more of it, or I need to go back and read more of it. But I do have access to it. I just haven't picked it up again. Let's see. I did recently pick up, because one of the other podcasts that I'm on is with a friend of mine, Nicole Hailstorm. She goes by Beatles Diva on Twitter. And she's a big Stephen King, the Dark Tower series fan, which has also been traded into comic form or whatnot. And I actually have the first volume, and I cracked it open last night, said, okay, I'm going to read it. And it is sitting beside me, so that's probably the next thing I'm going to ingest. I've started reading the My Little Pony comic, and And so, yeah. And I've read a couple issues of the Ninja Turtles, but again, it's just sometimes my time is just so limited that and I, at the end of the day when the kids are in bed, I'm like, I just want to go and veg to Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I also read Casa's run of G.I. Joe while he was writing Transformers because I wanted to see what else he'd written, and it was actually really good. I liked it. So yeah, I've dabbled with other things, but nothing that's like actually stuck. That I say that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna buy this now, and this is my next thing.
Yeah.
And it's 3 years straight right now, so I think I'm here to stay with Transformers. I'm getting all of the old Marvel run. I've sat down and read the first volume. I haven't read the second one yet, and I need to do that too.
Yeah.
Get around to it eventually.
Yeah. I find myself going backwards when it comes to Transformers. And again, as it's already been stated in this podcast, this is all Ender's damn fault.
It is.
I guess after he read issue 11 of More Than Meets the Eye, he was like, I will never see the origin of Shockwave ever again after that. And I was like, do I need to read the first 10 issues to get caught up? He said, yeah, you probably should.
Yeah.
So I went out and I got all 3 volumes of More Than Meets the Eye, and
you know why Ender was reading it, right? Because I told him, you better get on board with this dude. I said, you're missing out on some good stuff. He's like, yeah, whatever. I said, no, seriously, you need to check this out. I got him. Yeah. Not that I'd say that, I'm sure all he needed was a little encouragement. That's all he needed. He's such a Transformers fan. He really is.
Yeah, yes, he is.
And then he believed me, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, after that origin, yeah. I think anybody would be a
whopper,
believer.
Isn't it? That one was just like, oh my gosh.
It's so strange. So I've now, obviously the listeners know, since this is episode 15 of the show, Ender and I wrapped up our More Than Meets the Eye talk in episode 13.
Nice.
And so now that I'm caught up with More Than Meets the Eye, I'm going back and I'm going to see what the hell is going on Cybertron, so I got to go get rid.
Yes.
Oh.
It's good. It's really good. It feels like a slow burn at first, but it has an awesome payoff.
I'm trying to think. It's specifically and I'll say this now, I've only, for me and the Transformers Spotlights, I will not get every issue. I just won't. I will get the issue of characters I know and like Hot Rod, obviously, Cyclonus, Galvatron, Soundwave, and I have a lot of them now. I don't have them all, Shockwave. I don't have most of them, but I've got a good majority of them now. And I read, which one was it? It was, Spotlight Bumblebee. Oh, I just can't see Bumblebee in charge. It's just there's something wrong with the universe when Bumblebee is made the leader. I don't know, and that's what's kind of gonna probably scare me going into Rid, is because I know he is the leader on Cybertron, right?
He is, but then you get this nice, good power play because he's the leader, but there's Prowl, one. But two, and he does, Prowl gets you through the first 2 volumes, I'd say, because a lot of things, you see what Bumblebee's doing, but really what you want to know what's going on is with Prowl, because he's doing stuff behind the scenes, and there's stuff going on, and while you also get this nice buildup of what Bumblebee is dealing with, he's also got Metal Hawk and Starscream hanging around, just doing stuff at every turn, giving him a hard time all the time. He quite literally is just like, he never gets a break. He never gets a break. He's always got conflict directed at him at the whole time. And I think that's really what, if you focus on not necessarily that he's the leader, but that everything is standing in his way as the leader, the conflict is really not that bad. I mean, it's really good in the sense that you can tell. I mean, it's constantly living up to, hey, he just doesn't seem like he should be the leader. And you're right, because everything that's going on around him, everything says he shouldn't. And he's still just plowing along, trying to be that guy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just how they play the conflict. It's really, toward the end there, before everything kicks off and Megatron comes back, I was like, look, I kind of hope that these guys, like, you start getting this sympathetic eye toward Starscream, which I've never been a fan of his character, to be honest. Even back in G1 time, I thought he was just disloyal. He was never loyal to Megatron. He should have killed him a long time ago. When you had these girls that were like swooning over, being fans of Starscream, I was like, why? He's a jerk. But so I've never really had much love for Starscream. I thought, he's always just that guy that's bothering Megatron and keeping him from really, doing what he really needs to be doing, because he's always having to deal with his drama. But then I read Robots in Disguise, and I suddenly started seeing his character completely different, and I really became really sympathetic toward him, and I really liked his character, and I still kind of do, because he's still that guy. He can still be that guy, but some of the decisions that he makes towards the end, you're like, what? Well, he's Starscream. You should expect this, right? But leading up to that, in Robots in Disguise, you get this group of, you get Bumblebee the Autobot, Starscream the Decepticon, and Metalhawk the third party, the third faction, the Nail, the non-aligned Cybertronian. And they have this, it's like, I got to the point where I was like, it would be great is if they didn't have a like Prime anymore, and they just had, guys that were just kind of thrown together, voted wherever they're going to be like the leader, and you have these three as being the next leaders of the planet. And I thought, it would be great, because you can have this great conflict, because they're always nitpicking at each other and keeping each other in line, and being sarcastic and just picking where everybody's sensitivities are. And I thought, that's great conflict. That would be entertaining, especially in the sense that, they're always trying to get who's up on top, who's trying to be top dog in this group. And they're all fairly equal when it comes to some of the things. Bumblebee is just not the manipulator, and the other two are. So it's just, it turned into this, Bumblebee shouldn't be the leader, and here's the reason why: because these guys manipulate him in circles. Yeah, and it's just, he just doesn't know how to be that person, because that's not his character. So it was interesting just to see that, and that kept on being like, every week is like, oh gosh, Bumblebee, you need to have these guys teach you how to be this way. And eventually he does manipulate in one little way, and it was like, yes, finally he's learning. It's taken him this long, but I just think again, he's not that leader. He's not that type of leader, and not every leader has to be a manipulator. Right. But for him to be with when you're around other people that manipulate, you have to learn to play that game, or you have to learn to find a way to be above that and to, put them in their place. And he's just not that guy. He's never been that guy. So in a sense, Bumblebee shouldn't be the leader, but at the same time, because of the conflict that they're making in there and how they have it set up, I'm kind of glad that they have made him that guy, because they've played off that. They've played off of his weaknesses, and they've put him in some really nice conflict. And it's been really amazing to kind of see where they went with that. And I don't know where they're going to go next, but Barber has definitely got my attention, and I think that he's brilliant, and I trust pretty much anything he's going to go with, because he's really won me over in the last... I mean, he already won me over before that, but this just, it's like I've got 16 issues of proof now. So
Yeah, the whole Starscream thing. I liked him as a kid. I liked a lot of his voice for him in G1,
Uh-huh.
and you're right. The fangirls ruined it.
Yeah, kind of.
I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion.
I mean,
The
I
Starscream fangirls just really, really ruined it until the point of I saw how comedic he could be in animated, and then how dark he could be in Prime and Steve Bloom. Oh
Steve
God.
does a good job.
Steve is, no offense to Tom Kenny in that version of Starscream, but in this, to me, personally, Prime is this era's G1. Not saying this is, your children's G1, because that's obviously what G1 is for, but like to me, this is what G1 could have been, etc., etc., etc. And Steve Bloom, oh man, when he does Starscream, he does it so well. When we interviewed him, he was telling us that there was an episode, I think it's episode 20 of season 1, I think it's Partners, when he goes crazy and he starts to sound like...
This is not funny, Arachnid. Come back here right now and cut me loose. Arachnid, that is an order. I am your commanding officer.
Bloom does such a great job of doing that character so dark. I think it's season 1, episode 20, Partners, where he just freaks out and he almost mimics Lotta's version. Mm-hmm. When we interviewed him, I asked him about that, and he's like, yeah, they don't usually have me do that all that often because they wanted it to be its own voice, but when they do have me do it, the producers are in the booth giving me jazz hands in order for me to do Lotta Starscream. And no, but yeah, the Starscream fangirls really just like that. That was my whole resistance to Starscream.
My thing is, I remember being in grade school, and I remember specifically I was watching the show, and of course, when you started realizing, oh, other kids watch this too, and oh, I'm a fan, but you're like, I'm a fan, but I'm not that. I'm still cool, And, but they're like, you're a girl, you're watching a boy show, and I was like, so what? I've got two brothers, we watch it together, what of it? And he's like, well, Starscream must be your favorite then. I was like, why? It's like, because all the girls like Starscream, and that's when I learned to dislike the guy, because I had somebody else telling me what I should and shouldn't like, and I'm like, no, I like Optimus Prime. He's like my favorite character, but he's not Starscream. I was like, and give me a reason to like Starscream, because every girl likes it. I was like, I'm a girl and I don't. I think he's disloyal and a jerk. And they're like, what's wrong with you? You're not like the other girls. I was like, thank you.
Yeah. Oh man, but no, I'm trying to think. I forget if it was it the Underbase? I don't know. Somehow I heard about. It might have been one of your tweets, actually. I had heard about Rage of the Dinobots, the Prime miniseries, and that's really where I started.
Oh, good.
And then Ender, brought up the whole more than meets the eye thing, and I'm so excited to see where they take Beast Hunters in the comic, because Rage was so good, at least close to the end. It was so damn good.
It did something that I didn't expect, and I like things that do that. Like the last issue, I did not expect Shockwave to be in the last issue like he did. And so because of that, and I like this, when a writer does something I completely did not see or didn't expect, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm really interested. And that's exactly what Rage of the Dinobots did. And so I can see because I thought, oh, it's going to go this way. And then it didn't. And I was like, whoa, okay. And they just blew me away with that.
Yeah. With Rage, because it was Rage was actually my first. That was my how I get into Transformers comics. And I approached it as, okay, this is basically, based off the game. It's the new game Fall of Cybertron, and it's, the Dinobots on Cybertron, but it's going to be me Grimlock and me Sludge and me Snarl and me Slag. I don't care what anyone says. His name is Slag.
Agreed.
I thought it was going, I thought this, reading that first issue, I was like, this is too strange, seeing the Dinobots talk coherently. Mm. And it's, I didn't dislike it, it was just, one of those, huh? Moments. And I was like, this is so weird. And everybody complains, I think is it Rage? Yeah, it's Rage where they have the alternate alt modes, right? Their first alt modes.
I think it does, but it also kind of plays off of what they did in the with the game a little bit, because in the game you fight. Actually, the game you get the first look at all of their new alt modes, but you don't really get a chance to see anything that they did before. But yeah, they did have that in there.
Right. Yeah. Well, in the comic they have all the and I'm thinking, okay, the names for the most part, minus Slag, are the same. The characteristics are slightly, strangely different. Oh wait, those aren't the alt modes I know, and I know what it's leading up to. Obviously, it's leading up to the fact that, and spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it yet. I know it's leading up to the fact that Shockwave created them. Created what we know as T-Rex, Grimlock. All that stuff. I get that. But it was one of those moments where I wasn't taken out of the story. I was intrigued by it, by seeing, hey, the Dinobots had different alt modes before they were actually Dinobots.
It was either that one or it was the Fall of Cybertron tie-in.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, well, in that one, he doesn't transform into a dinosaur till what, episode 2, episode 3, or issue episode. It's the same thing, right?
Same thing, yeah.
But the thing is, I knew when I came into that, because I had been following the game. I'd been following the game since the first game came out. So second game came out. Right. I actually did get a chance to go out and see it before anybody else did, review a few things with it, because High Moon had invited some of the Transformers website individuals to come out, and I was able to go out on behalf of T-Formers. And so I got to hear Grimlock at the very beginning. I mean, they didn't show us too much. They just kind of showed us a little bit. And I got to hear some of the voice, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great. I got to talk to a couple of guys about their decision of putting Grimlock as the dude, and one of the guys that was against it from the very beginning, I totally heard what he said, and I said, yeah, you're right, because repraising that role, you were kind of taking a big chance, and I can see why. I was like, I won't knock you for being the guy that was trying to be the voice of reason, because I was kind of that girl too. But then I heard what he said, and I was like, he's bringing it. He really is. It was great to see that, and so that's why I'm like, hey, it'd be great if they got Greg Berger to come on Transformers Prime, if they do make a cameo. I was like, please do this, please. That would be such a nod if they did that.
And see, the thing is, and we were talking about this off air a couple weeks ago. It was one of those things where my theory is that they could essentially have the Dinobots in the show if they wanted to.
True. They could.
But they don't have to put them on Earth, because the Decepticons can bridge to Cybertron, so they could, still, if you just say the Beast Hunters comic isn't coming, even though it is, say it isn't, and the show takes the Dinobots from where Rage ended. Mm-hmm. Just have them on Cybertron and have Shockwave go back. It would be absolutely awesome. My one thing is, and I'm not sure if the other voice actors that originally voiced the Dinobots are still with us. I know 2 of them are. My only thing with the Dinobots is, if they show up in the show, I need Berger and I need Michael Bell, Greg Berger and Michael Bell, to voice Grimlock and Swoop, because those are because what I want them to do something that does pay homage to G1, but at the same time, the writing would be kind of like what Rage is, where they're actually talking instead of, me, dumb Dinobot, instead of the dumb talk. I want to see what the voice actors would do with lines, and we kind of know what Greg would do.
Yeah, we've been able to hear that. If you played the game, you hear what he went with it, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Very dark and gritty. It was just did a good job with it.
Yeah,
I love that game.
Yeah,
I haven't played it for a while, but I just love that game.
Yeah, and the comics, they're so good. And so, like, when I went into More Than Meets the Eye, I was like, Ender was like, oh, and my thinking was, oh, okay, well, I actually looked it up on the on the TF Wiki to see what the basic premise was, and it's like, oh, Rodimus and a ragtag group of Autobots go on the Lost Light to find the Knights of Cybertron. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be Autobots, at least names I know. And it wasn't. And I was like, okay, well, I can kind of go with this and whatever else. And as I kept reading More Than Meets the Eye and reading it, I'm like, oh my, like all these moments just like, because I went into it as a G1 fan thinking, oh, if it's not what I know, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it wasn't what I knew outside of Rodimus and Magnus, because their friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it, in the comic is essentially the same thing that happened in it's the same kind of dynamic, where Rodimus is kind of like the free-for-all, winging it person, and Ultra Magnus is basically got the stick up his afterburner.
We're going to do it like this because that's our protocol, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why aren't you wearing badges?
We don't need no stinking badges.
Yeah. And I'm reading this, and I'm really enjoying all of these characters, and just how sick and twisted some of them are, specifically Whirl.
Yes. Oh, Whirl. Whirl. The Wreckers and Whirl.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rung, how a crazed robot can be a psychologist. I have no, like, that dude is crazy. Rung is just out there. His eyebrows could have their own comic.
Yeah. There have been suggestions of it already.
It'll be a spotlight.
They have to do that eventually. Spotlight that man. Spotlight it.
But it's like all these characters that I didn't think I was going to like, I actually liked them all. I only got tripped up with the whole Decepticon Justice Division and all that, and meeting. And once I got to know I think it's 6, not the Justice Division cons, but the other ones, Misfire and...
Oh, okay.
That
group of Decepticons that were on the planet, yeah.
Right, yeah. I actually, again, got to like them. The only thing that really threw me off was all these, I guess you could call them street judges almost, with the Decepticon Justice Division. I didn't really get that whole thing, but after reading all 3 volumes of More Than Meets the Eye, and I actually had, I have issues 12 and 13 digitally, and I have 14 through 16 sitting on the table here. Nice. So I'm caught up. I'm done. I'm ready. Bring on 17, 18. Bring on the next arc, whatever it is. I'm ready to go. So, but yeah, it's like I don't know, between Beast Hunters, between More Than Meets the Eye, and now Rid, I'm pretty much well set for Transformers comics amongst everything else I read.
Nice.
I don't know. I don't know what else they're gonna do. I don't know what else they can do. They've got so much going on right now. Like, I don't see them releasing any new outside of Beast Hunters. I don't see them adding more titles.
Yeah, I think that if they go to like IDW, pulling in and doing the amount of comics that they're doing right now, I think that where they're at is a good place, and I don't know if they'd shake it up too much by adding another one in there. I'd love it if they did, because I'm still holding out for that, Wreckers Part 2. But I don't think it'll happen this year, and I think it probably, if it's going to happen, it would be maybe late next year, if at all. So we'll see what happens, because last year they did an annual, and I'm guessing that there might be a possibility of another one this year, but we'll see. I don't know. It just depends on if they have time to do it, and if they have a really great idea that they're going to run with. And I don't know. I've read James. James is one of those guys that, okay, like 10 years ago, he wrote a fan fiction called Eugenesis. Now, I happened to read that right after after everybody kind of said, hey, you should read this thing that he wrote, after I read Last Stand of the Wreckers. And so I said, okay, sure, I'll pick it up. And I've been one of those people that, I like reading. So I've read lots of stories, and I know what I like and what I don't like. And when I picked that up and I read it, I probably read it within 7 days. And I just knew after reading that he is going to write some really great stuff. If only they will give him a chance and he gets a chance to run with it. Just because of how he was setting things up, how he did what he did in the conflict in that, and how he built things, and how, like, I didn't know some of the characters that were in there because I never read any of the Marvel stuff, and apparently I think it came off of some of the Marvel stuff that he was kind of writing some of the story that he wrote. And I could just tell by reading it that he had more in him to give. He's one of those guys that I think he's ingested all of Marvel, because it's where, he said it was, he's been doing all of the UK volumes and putting a lot of love into that, and it all comes from the fact that he was raised on that. He's one of those guys that I think he's read it, it's percolated in his crazy brain for the last, however many years it's been since he's read all of that. And he is going to give us a lot of stuff if we just let him. And I'm on the James team right here. I totally think that he's going to do some really fantastic stuff, and I am just ready for the ride.
Yeah, I am too, because I know I need to go back and I need to read Last Stand of the Wreckers. I think the only thing outside of I can't get any more comics right now that's really stopping me from seeking it out is I'm not a fan of Springer.
Aww.
Springer is a home wrecking mofo that I just can't stand. He basically blocked Hot Rod in the movie. He does have better things to do tonight than die, because oh God, I loved it. Was it season 3? Yeah, in season 3, he goes through a garbage chute and he gets all his, basically take what Galvatron did to Ultra Magnus and basically have a garbage chute do that to Springer.
Oh no, yeah.
Basically what happened.
I remember that. Yeah.
I cheered. I was like, yes, he's gone. Oh no.
You're the one you're the one that's coined the phrase that he's a green bastard.
No, it's not.
It's not
me.
you. I thought I remember hearing you say that.
No, I've coined the phrase that he's a damn home wrecker.
Okay.
That's what he is.
Oh my bad. Okay.
I just.
Because I remember hearing somebody say that he's, and I thought, really?
Yeah, I just can't. So.
That's all right.
I'm gonna obviously put my Springer hate aside and really really look at Last Stand of the Wreckers for what it is. I'm not gonna go in with
He's not the same guy in IDW continuity, and I kind of like his character better, to be honest. I don't know how he is in Marvel, in the Marvel stuff, because I haven't read all of it yet. But yeah, I always kind of thought there were some moments where he was a real jerk.
Yeah.
But you know what? That could be said of a lot of the Autobots in G1. We're kind of jerkish.
That's true. Not trash.
Prime, yelling at, Sideswipe, give me your jetpack now. It's just.
Well, I think I can forgive that one moment for Optimus because it was a little bit emotional for him.
True. But like, you're
And
terrorizing the Sideswipe. Stop.
oh man, but
They
no,
all had
I
their
am.
moments where they were just. When I go back and read it or go back and watch it, I'm just like, I love these guys. They're great. But yeah, sometimes you guys can really act like a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, it's so great, and I don't know. I'm just so like I'm so at this point after catching up with More Than Meets the Eye. I'm so interested to see what remains or is it Remain in Light?
Remain in Light, yes, that's
the next story.
Arc.
I have no idea what's and like you said earlier, I like it that way that I have no idea, but it's like after. Well, I haven't read issue 17. Issue 17 hasn't come out yet, right?
It has not yet.
Yeah, as of this recording, it has not come out yet.
Well, I think we'll get it next week, or maybe the week after that, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fantastic. I can't wait. James is one of those guys that I know that you're saying, like, I don't know where it's going. It's like he's very deliberate when he drops things. I bet you once we actually start seeing what we're getting, that we'll be able to go look back on what he's given us the last, other 16 issues, and we will see little things in there that he's planted so expertly, and we're like, whoa, I didn't even get that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I love how in his writing they find a way to work in references. I forget which issue it is. I think it's either issue 12 or issue 13, where they're trying to. Is it one of the Autobots or one of the? I don't know. It's the one with the faceplate that has the low voice, and they're like, "Hey, you kind of are you Megatron? Let me imitate Optimus Prime."
Yeah.
And they do the whole. He writes the whole thing of.
I think it was 13 actually.
Yeah,
12 or 13.
I think it is 13.
No, 13 was when they went to that planet. I think it's 12 actually.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to actually look it up because it's one of those things. Well, it's one. I took a screen cap.
You sound like Megatron. Yeah, I know. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. That's good. Where is it? It's on my Facebook here somewhere, or I thought it was. What the heck? But it was so funny because they imitated the scene from the movie, but here it is. You who are now without mercy, now plead for it. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe they worked that in. Just the little things that James does in the writing with homages to almost everything. Yeah. And I just absolutely love it when I catch them. The only thing that really freaks me out about More Than Meets the Eye, and sadly it's over now, seeing as how, quote unquote, one of the characters is dead, was Rewind having basically nothing to do with Black. Like, I know Ender always says, "Oh, would you rather just have them fold up and fit in somebody's chest?" That's not nearly as bad as them being married. And it's that G1 fan in me that the cassettes or the memory sticks or whatever are associated with Blaster or Soundwave. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where it's like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. I don't know. It's just one of those things. What do you guys got coming up on Underbase?
Well, we're pretty full with reviews. I mean, now that I've actually did that interview with Josh Perez and Josh Burcham last week, and that was kind of like I had an idea to do like a colorist cuddle in a sense. For a while, I just didn't have a space to put it in, and then we found out that Regeneration 1 had been moved and we had already reviewed it, so I had a free week, and so I was like, oh crap, I gotta figure out a podcast and I gotta do it really quick. So luckily it all worked out. Both Joshes were not necessarily between jobs, but they were like it was like the sweet spot where it's like, okay, well, we're both really busy. What you got? And I was like, well, how about this time on this time? And I was like, oh yeah, that'll work out perfect. And it turned out that I think they were just in the right spot where Josh Perez hadn't gotten his stuff yet. And I think Josh Bertram wasn't under his deadline too tightly. So he was like working while we were talking with him. But he wasn't too far behind. So he wasn't like crunched for time. So it just turned out that it was a perfect slot, perfect time, and it just ends up kind of working like that a lot when we kind of have a little week like that. But this week, tomorrow actually, as soon as I can get it out, we've got Robots in Disguise 17 that we've just recorded, and I've got to edit that. And then we've got Monstrosity, and then I think next week we get More Than Meets the Eye 17. And possibly Monstrosity 7 if we can get that review done before it gets too late. And of course, Beast Hunters is also going to be out next week as well. And I'm probably going to give that over to the same team that did Rage of the Dinobots, and we'll have that at the beginning of June. So next month, we're going to be having our anniversary show, which I'm still trying to figure out what we're going to do. But it will be it'll be comic related in one way or another. I have an idea. I don't want to tease it too much because I'm like, I really gotta put all my notes together and I hopefully get it to work out. And if I can get it to work, it'll be great. But if I don't, then I'll be like, oh, we have no anniversary show. So but that's pretty much what's coming up with us. And then, of course, conventions between now and the time that my kids go back to school. I'm going to be going to BotCon, and I'm going to try to hit TFCon for my first time this year. And then, of course, I've got to go back to Auto Assembly. Steve Bloom is going to be there, and so is Nick Roach and Jim Sorensen and James Roberts and all of these people that I want to go see that I've just been, it's funny because I'm like, I can't kind of give this up because I've got so many friends over in the UK now, and it's just like, it's like a family vacation. I mean, where I don't take my kids with me. I go to meet family. I go to meet my geek family, and it's just what it is. I can't not do that because it's like, I'll miss them so much. And,
as of this recording, you'll be seeing Steve Bloom twice.
Yes, I will.
Because he and Amari and the rest of the cast of Rescue Bots were announced as BotCon guests this year.
Yes, I saw that. I haven't had a chance to actually see who all is going to be there, but I saw the Rescue Bots thing, and I went, yes, finally BotCon. It's about time that you put that out there. So yeah, but I won't be able to interact with him as much as I will be at Auto Assembly, and so I'm really looking forward to being able to actually go up and shake his hand, whereas at BotCon, I don't really think that's going to happen too much. A little bit different.
Basically all the voice actors from the main Autobots are going to be there. Parvish Cheena, Steve Bloom, DC Douglas.
Now you're making my heart beat really fast.
and Amari Williams, which we at the Geekcast Radio Network have interviewed both Steve and Amari.
It's fantastic.
But yeah, no, I love it when BotCon does that. They really last couple of years. Okay, I get it. It's they want to be able to get people in there, and obviously what gets most of us that grew up with it is the G1 voice actors, but I'm so glad that they're finally reaching out to like the current shows and like the current stuff and all that stuff. I love that they're doing that. So that's great.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked then that for the same reason too, because I'm like, hey, give Rescue Bots some love. It's brilliant. It's for little kids, but it is so much fun.
It's so much fun.
I can't wait for it to come back. It's been gone for too long already. We've gotten Transformers Prime already before we've gotten that, and we won't get to see that until December, so I'm like, this dead zone is killing me.
Wait, Rescue Bots isn't coming back till December?
Yeah, it's not coming back till December. We get, it's going to be second season. The second season. It'll be December into next year.
Wow. That's
and I
just
only know
great.
that because I've been following that, because I also run another podcast called The Rescue Center. It's kind of on hiatus right now because I've been too busy to do any of the reviewing for that. I need to get back into it. We're gonna finish it up before Rescue Bots Season 2 starts. So there you go.
Cool. All right. Well, it's been fun and interesting, and yeah, IDW is putting out some really, really cool stuff. I just can't pay attention to, like, the only other IDW title I'm going to be getting is, well, besides the Transformer stuff, is the new animated Turtles Adventures based on the new cartoon.
Oh, nice. Now, that's another one that I
well,
haven't been following. I've been watching the new cartoon, but I haven't been following the comics too close. I really do need to do it.
The comic apparently is just now starting here in a couple of months. They had a free comic book day issue with a story.
And I didn't even know it. Darn it.
Yeah, I'm sure Comixology would have it or something.
Yeah, I'll have to find that.
But yeah, no, it's really fun and really cool. The rest of the stuff I read is mostly DC. I'm hooked on my Bat Heroes, so for the most part. So, all right, well, that's gonna do it for us here in the Pull Bag. It's been a very, very interesting ride through Cybertron with you.
Awesome, yeah. Cybertron's the best, man.
Yes, that's right. And we will catch you next time with, I have no idea what, because the schedule for this podcast changes almost weekly. So we'll have something for you in episode 16. Mm-hmm. For now, I am TFG1Mike with
LadyWreck.
And we will catch you next time. Keep reading those comics.
Absolutely.
Spare me this mockery of justice.
They've got more Sharkticons than we have photon charges.
Then let's hold a demolition derby. You just heard the latest episode of The Pull Bag, GCRN's comic book review podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate our show on iTunes and be sure to leave us feedback. Call the voicemail line, 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you were leaving the message for and your name. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can send us an email, feedback@geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter @GeekcastRadio. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.